Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Friday, March 5th, 2021. Today, we are going to finish this article that we did last night. I was about a little more than halfway done with it whenever I had to stop because it was getting late, and I got to the video late last night because some things were going on, and then my mom called, and I was talking to my nephew and stuff, and I didn't get to it until later, so I didn't really get to go as long as I wanted to. But I do have a couple things here that we're going to go over, and at the end we are going to go through some more freedom quotes, not from the founders but from other people throughout history, just to show the similarities of people's idea of freedom and what ideas of freedom that we should have today. As you could tell, it's been getting, well, depending on where you are, it's been getting a little warmer out, but today it's actually kind of cold, and you could tell the weather is trying to break. So springtime is almost upon us, which is good because that means we made it through the darkest winter, what they were talking about. And it was a pretty dark winter that we had, all the things that went on. But we're all still waiting on that major false flag that they're definitely going to pull off at some point in time. And I saw that Tim, actually, from Restore the Republic 76 and Republic in Distress, he actually filmed right outside of his work some FEMA trains. Let's call them what they are. Yes, when you go and look them up, it says something about automobile transport, but do yourself a favor right now and just go type in car transport by train, and not one of those train cars will pop up. They're different ones. And as we all know, Hitler and Stalin and even the Chinese Communist Party, they come out and they say that these certain things are for something else, always under a false pretense. So they say, oh, these are for cars, but we know better than that. They come equipped with chains and shackles. And I tried to find the picture earlier that I saw years ago in like 2014, because I wanted to bring it on and I wanted to show you guys when I told you guys about Tim catching that on his camera or on his phone, however he filmed it. But if you have not seen that, please go watch it, because those were definitely FEMA trains. And something you have to ask yourself is, if they're just transporting cars, why do they have windows with bars on them? We already know what it's for. We already know about the calling of humanity. Not calling, C-A-L-L, culling, C-U-L-L. We know about the guidestones. We know about the population agenda. We know about all of that. But I'm going to start here today reading this about the reset and what we were reading yesterday. And then I have another article that's very, very good about, well, I'm not going to tell you what it's about yet, because I don't want you to have to skip the video just to see that part. I'm going to make you listen to me talk for a little bit. So if you don't mind it, then you can stay and hang out, or you can go through my video and you can skip around and listen to what you want to listen to. That's your prerogative. But this one says, Great Reset envisions a citizen-centered welfare state. Actually, before we get here, I'm going to do a recap. Let's do that. Okay, so this whole thing is about the Great Reset will dramatically expand the surveillance state via real-time tracking. And it talks about the Great Reset, digital identity, Internet of Bodies, humans as commodities, citizens as inventory, people as products. And Ron Paul was the major influence for this article. And he said the Great Reset is about expanding government power and suppressing liberty worldwide. Yes. Talked about COVID vaccination and immunity passports. Just going down through, talked about digital identity and the Internet of Bodies. And this is ID 2020 stuff. This is you connected to the internet through the fourth industrial revolution. Klaus Schwab literally said that it will change our biological identity. Yep, going through dystopian scenarios. Digital identity agenda picked up speed throughout 2020, of course, with the contact tracing and immunity passports, which those are still to be continued. We will have to have that. Right now, I mean, it's starting to look okay. People are starting to get happy because, oh, they're lifting restrictions and Texas is fully open. And all these states are doing away with these restrictions because they know that they're just terrible and a way to take our freedom away. No, they're not doing it just because, oh, we want to take care of our people. No, they're doing it because it's part of the agenda. So they can then come back and say, see what happens when we give you a little bit of freedom, and what we were doing before wasn't working, so now we're going to have to implement this whole thing. Agenda 21. It's literally like Pavlov's dogs. Talking about stakeholder capitalism and how it's actually fascism. Okay, we talked about the authoritarian use of digital identity and how it's already being used in China with their social credit system, which we will have here, i.e. patent number WO 2020 060606, which is a cryptocurrency system using body activity data. We went over that one. Maybe I'll pull it up again. I don't have it bookmarked, but here is where we are now. Great Reset envisions a citizen-centered welfare state. Between 2014 and 2017, the World Economic Forum called to reshape, restart, reboot, and reset the global order every single year, each aimed at solving various crises. 2014, they published a meeting agenda entitled Reshaping of the World, Consequences for Society, Politics, and Business. 2015, publishes an article in collaboration with Vox EU called We Need to Press Restart on the Global Economy. 2016, they held a panel called How to Reboot the Global Economy. 2017, they published an article saying our world needs a reset in how we operate. And it just so happened that in 2020, the coronavirus was the catalyst needed to enact the Great Reset plan that had been bubbling under the surface for years, I would say decades. And immunity passports are just another step in the overall plan to track and trace every citizen through their digital identity. That's only one aspect of it, guys. The digital identity and the tracing, that is one aspect of an incredibly multifaceted, multi-layered plan. The digital identity is literally one chapter in the entire book. And the book is the whole plan. When politicians, captains of industry, and bureaucrats talk about the need for a great reset, they're referring to an ideology that was put in place way before COVID-19 was ever a thing. Yeah, it was the New World Order ideology. We've covered that, and we've all pretty much known that for a long time. A lot of people are starting to come around, but it's like they use these nets, you could say. People are like waking up, and so they fall through the net, and they fall into the QAnon net, and they get trapped there. And then you filter out, and the little bit of us that get through that get to the actual truth, which is not that QAnon crap. They have nets for a lot of things, like layers to like catch people in and keep you there. All it took was a global crisis to make their final push toward a technocratic utopia where you and I own nothing, have no privacy, and live in a citizen-centered welfare state. And the reason we will own nothing is, well, the reason they created the Federal Reserve debt system was that they could put us so far into debt that, later that debt has to be paid back. And when you can't pay that debt in real value, which is raw materials, then they take all your stuff and you own nothing. That is how they're going to achieve this. And you won't have any privacy because you also will be owned. Because they're going to renew the social contract, as like they talk about at the World Economic Forum in Davos and at the Bilderberg meetings and all of that crap. The CFR, Trilateral Commission, they talk about rewriting the social contract. And this is what Klaus Schwab said. The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world to create a healthier, more equitable, and more prosperous future. When they say healthier, that's their world immunization agenda. Go look that up. Right now, pause my video and go look it up. World immunization agenda for 2030. We could wait till I'm done, but you should go just see what it is real quick. The world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions, Schwab declared in June 2020. Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism. I would say it's a great reset from capitalism. There will be no capitalism. There's no capitalism now. These people patented everything that could ever be invented ever. They've even killed people in the process who've come up with ideas, patented their stuff and shelved it. That's what they do. So in few words, they found these doors to get rich and to be prosperous. You could use what he said. And then they closed the door behind them so nobody else could ever. That's not capitalism. Since Schwab's declaration, heads of state, past and present, royalty, and the media have all jumped on board the Great Reset train toward the nefarious new normal. But some have been pushing back. And of course, new normal is code for New World Order. Now let's read that with New World Order in place of New Normal. Because every time you hear that, you could just swap words and it makes sense. Since Schwab's declaration, heads of state, past and present, royalty, and the media have all jumped on board the Great Reset train toward the nefarious New World Order. But some have been pushing back. Great Reset resistance. Apart from Ron Paul denouncing the Great Reset earlier this week, Brazil's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ernesto Araujo, has publicly denounced the unelected globalist ideology, tweeting last month, "Brazil stands for freedom. No to the Great Reset." Araujo told a special session of the United Nations in December. Totalitarian social control is not the remedy for any crisis. Those who dislike freedom always try to benefit from moments of crisis to preach the curtailing of freedom. Let's not fall for that trap. If this guy actually believes that, then I would stand with him, but I also know that anybody in power in any country is not put there unless you are part of the club. And he said the pandemic must not lead to totalitarian social control or the abrogation of fundamental freedoms. Freedom is foundational to the UN and essential to human dignity. Brazil stands for freedom, no to the Great Reset. One, freedom is not foundational to the UN. It is essential to human dignity, however. But we already went over the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Last year, the World Economic Forum backed multiple immunity passport and digital health credentialing projects that are rolling out now, such as Travel Pass, developed by partner IATA, Common Pass, developed by WEF partner Commons Project, COVID Pass, developed by WEF Young Global Leader. Also in 2019, the European Commission was already planning on rolling out vaccination passports across the European Union by 2022. According to the EC Roadmap on Vaccination 2019 to 2022 report, which was last updated Q3 2019, well before the global crisis. Yeah, it just so happens that this came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, nobody's seen it coming except for Richie from Boston on January 7th when he literally said, why do they need all this stuff unless there's going to be a pandemic? And that's it. That's the next step. End quote. I watched that live. And right after he said that, that's when they started taking him down. And now you can only find him on BitChute, sort of, but Richie from Boston TV, where he uploads regularly, uncensored, good old-fashioned. Health passports can be used to free up mobility in a safe way for the benefit of billions, or they can be used to deny citizens access to certain goods and services, especially when pegged to someone's overall digital identity. There we go. That's what they're going to use it for. All of the dystopian scenarios laid out in this article may not come to fruition, and all the technologies described can be enlisted to help liberate society out of sickness, poverty, and despair. My biggest concern is in placing all my trust in the hands of wealthy, powerful who fund, develop, and have a vested interest in the use and control of the technology and its governance. And that is the end of this article. We don't have to read the author's note. Well, he said he removed the following paragraph for lacking context because it was left over from a section that didn't make final cut. He said tracking our movement and social behavior is one part of the globalist Great Reset agenda. That's literally what I just said. And it won't stop with immunity passports. The Great Reset is not the main event, you could say. The Great Reset is just like the door to the house, which is the New World Order. The reset is just their way to get it. Their great work, to quote Manly P. Hall. Now we're going to move over to something else, and I'm very excited to show you this, so we will go there now. This is an introduction to Fabian Socialism via Brave New World in 1984. I really want to get my hands on Brave New World. I've read 1984, but you just can't find a real copy of Brave New World. It's very, very difficult. And this was updated on my birthday, 1/27/2021. 1,200 words. You guys ready to go? I am. Unfortunately, many people today mistakenly believe that 1984 was a diatribe against fascism. It's a reasonable assumption considering that the book was written and published 1947 to 48 and 1949, immediately after the Second World War, and the conclusive defeat of fascism. However, in reality, 1984 was a scathing attack on the arch enemies of fascism, the globalist victors of the Second World War. Orwell was by no means sympathetic to fascism, of course, but he believed that the Allies were led by megalomaniacs who would betray the ideals of democratic socialism by creating a totalitarian world government that was socialist and democratic in name but oligarchical in nature. Orwell was 100% correct. The Allies, who had been known as the United Nations since the Arcadia Conference in 1942, formalized the UN alliance as a world governing body immediately after the Second World War ended. However, their conspiracy to create a global government wasn't cooked up during the Second World War. The same gang of globalists founded the League of Nations in 1919 as part of the Treaty of Versailles, signed immediately after the First World War. Their first attempt at world governance was completely ineffectual and disrespected internationally. The League of Nations had no political nor economic power, a problem that the UN was designed to resolve. The UN's first political act outside of warmongering was to establish a one-world global banking system. They achieved this in 1944 via the Bretton Woods Conference, at which they founded the World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund, among other organizations such as the GATT, which became the World Trade Organization. In 1946, all of the League of Nations assets, including its major sub-organizations, were directly transferred to the UN. This transition was more or less a massive rebranding operation. Today, out of the 195 countries of the world, 190 members are members of the IMF and 193 are UN member states, bound to the United Nations laws and regulations. They should have added via the UN Charter. Here's a wartime poster for the Allies in World War II. Yeah, it's all about freedom, right? Not. The setting of 1984, a world divided between three giant empires competing for world domination, was inspired by the Tehran Conference, held between the big three of the United Nations, the UK, USA, and USSR. Orwell describes each empire's ideology as a form of oligarchical collectivism, centralized collectivist state that explicitly benefits the ruling oligarchy at the expense of the masses. The term was derived from bureaucratic collectivism, a Trotskyite criticism of Stalinist Marxist-Leninism, describing a communist state in which all profit is distributed among the party's elite bureaucracy rather than the proletariat. 1984's Empire of Eurasia practiced neo-Bolshevism, East Asia death worship, or obliteration of self, and Oceania, INGSOC, formerly English socialism. INGSOC was modeled on the ideals of the British Fabian Society, which was founded in 1884. In 1984, Orwell essentially describes what he envisioned to be the consequences of 100 years of Fabian socialism. He was well acquainted with many leading Fabians, including Brave New World author Aldous Huxley, who tutored him at Eton College. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that Huxley tutored Orwell. Weird. The Fabian Society was founded as a political arm of the Fellowship of New Life, an occult socialist think tank founded in 1883. The Fellowship was home to many influential figures, including the UK's first Labour Party Prime Minister and Karl Marx's daughter, Eleanor. The Fabian Society has been dominant in both British and global politics for over a century. It founded numerous influential organizations, such as the London School of Economics, 1895, and the British Labour Party, 1900. Fabians were instrumental in the creation of the United Nations and the entire post-war world order itself. Aldous Huxley's brother Julian, for example, was the first director of UNESCO. He also coined the term transhumanism in his book, New Bottles for New Wine, 1950. So the idea of transhumanism has been around for a while. Now we're seeing it materialize by changing our biological identity, to quote Klaus Schwab. You see how they're all connected? You see how this has been going on for a long time? It doesn't matter if you change administrations. Those people are on the bottom. They're there for you to be divided over and to pay attention to. And the real stuff happens behind the scenes. The Fabians' political aim is the creation of a one-world socialist government ruled by a technocratic elite that micromanages every aspect of our lives, including our biology, via transhumanism. However, their ultimate goal is the total spiritual reconstruction of humanity, the birth of a new man akin to the Bolshevik Soviet man. Although the fundamental worldview of Fabian socialists is near identical to that of Marxist communists, their political strategy is radically different. While Marxists advocated violent world revolution, Fabians favor an incredibly gradual, almost undetectable transition toward a totalitarian world state. Nevertheless, many leading Fabians, such as Sidney and Beatrice Webb, sang high praises of the USSR, even into the Stalinist period, describing it as a vision of future ideal civilization. Which one do you think they're going through right now? Violent world revolution or gradual, undetectable transition? The Fabian Society derives its name from the Roman general Quintus Fabius, known as the Delayer. Its logo and emblem are a wolf in sheep's clothing and a tortoise. And its first pamphlet read, "For the right moment you must wait, as Fabius did most patiently, when warring against Hannibal, through many censored his delays. But when the time comes you must strike hard, as Fabius did, or your waiting will be in vain and fruitless." If you think that's on the nose, flip through some of the fiction novels and other literary works published by leading Fabians. And right here we have a couple books. The Open Conspiracy, Blueprints for a World Revolution by H.G. Wells, The New World Order by H.G. Wells, you know, the one that doesn't exist. And there's the Fabian Society, wolf in sheep's clothing. And the other one's a tortoise. I don't know why they didn't include that one. Excuse me. H.G. Wells' A Modern Utopia, 1905, describes a world ruled by a world state, global government that owns the entirety of the planet. An order of voluntary nobility known as the samurai rule the world to resolve the problem of combining progress with political stability. Humanity is vegan. All genders are equal. Human races are no longer recognized. Automation renders physical labor near obsolete, and currency is based off units of energy. It's working out for them, wouldn't you say, guys? It's really working out for them. Man, they're getting this done, and there's so many people who are helping them. People that think that we're going through progress. And guys, we're just becoming more enlightened as a society, and we're becoming more accepting. No. You're all being used. You will all be destroyed the same as we. They are weakening us, and then they will destroy us. In his work, The New World Order, 1940, Wells puts forward a political framework to guide global leaders toward achieving world peace. In brief, it entails the abolition of nation-states and the creation of a centralized, socialist, technocratic, scientifically planned world state. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights was based on the New World Order. We read that. We already know that. The people that have been here for a while know that, if you've watched all my videos, because we went over all this stuff. Wells' The Shape of Things to Come, 1933, speculates on future events up to the year 2106. He envisions a world left in ruins by a catastrophic global conflict in which a self-appointed elite takes the reins to rebuild society and humanity itself via massive worldwide social engineering. They establish a world state that abolishes all religions, the need for physical labor, and social classes, reducing the entirety of humanity to middle-class intellectuals. Eventually, the world state withers away, Marxist style. They're not going to need to take until 2106. In 2106, this will be established for a good while. We'll all be dead, of course. That's a long time from now. But they really want to get it done by 2030, which is where they have their goalposts set for now. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World describes a world state, noticing any patterns here? Of course we are. In which citizens are socially, biologically, and environmentally engineered. Transhumans are produced in artificial wombs on an assembly line and genetically designed to fit into a rigid intelligence-based caste system. Unlike 1984, which describes an oppressive totalitarian state that restricts all aspects of humanity outside of labor. The masses of Brave New World are oppressed by an overabundance of luxuries, consumerism, promiscuity, drugs, and so on, becoming slaves to their own carnal desires. Do you think we're there? Are we not oppressed by an overabundance of luxuries, quote, consumerism, promiscuity, drugs? We are already slaves to our carnal desires. History, religion, and literature are all banned. Brave New World was pitched as a dystopian fiction novel, of course, but its predictions have been among the most accurate. It's because it wasn't fiction. None of this stuff is ever fiction. Does any of this sound familiar? It should, because it's exactly what modern globalists are doing to you at this very moment. This nightmare world didn't come out by chance. It's a meticulous creation since the end of the Second World War. There has been a steady march toward the Fabians' idealized vision, which appears to be culminating in the Great Reset agenda. And this is what Huxley said at the speech in California Medical School in 1961. There will be in the next generation or so, that would be us, and or so, which would be our children, so we're here now. A pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak. Producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies, so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods. And this seems to be the final revolution. Well, yeah, because there will be no need to be any more after that. Because they won't have to revolve anything. They won't have to. They'll have their great work completed. Well, until the Lord smites them completely and, banishes the serpent for 1,000 years, but they'll have it. Their vision of utopia. Postscript. An interesting related fact, Aldous Huxley wrote a foreword for a renowned book published by the United Nations' Ashley Montagu, Israel Ehrenberg, who co-authored UNESCO's seminal race denialist document, The Race Question, 1950. Ehrenberg was a student of Franz Boas and studied at Columbia University, which housed the Marxist think tank Institute for Social Research, or Frankfurt School, after they were expelled from Europe. The Frankfurt School, together with the Rockefeller-funded New School for Social Research, are almost solely responsible for subverting the entirety of the West's education systems. Their students can be found in all major influential globalist organizations throughout the world. And that is the end of this, and these are just comments. Let's see what people are saying. Well, it seems like, some people are starting to wake up a little bit. Only a few, though, ever come to something like this. This is where you get real information, right here. Oh, we're 35 minutes in. Well, I guess we can go to some inspiring things. And these are more freedom quotes. This was Joe Class, 12 Steps to Happiness. The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. Jesus also said the truth shall set you free. Go away. I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will. Charlotte Bronte. She's one of the Bronte sisters. Lock up your libraries if you like, but there is no gate, no lock, no bolt that you can set upon the freedom of my mind. Virginia Woolf. The most courageous act is still to think for yourself, aloud. Coco Chanel, whoever that is. And we all know this one. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. George Orwell. Some tourists think Amsterdam is a city of sin, but in truth, it's a city of freedom. And in freedom, most people find sin. John Green. In The Fault in Our Stars. And Mahatma Gandhi said, freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes. Yes. Of course. And this is by Jim Morrison of The Doors. The most important kind of freedom is to be what you really are. You trade in your reality for a role. You trade in your sense for an act. You give up your ability to feel. In exchange, you put on a mask. There can't be any large-scale revolution until there's a personal revolution on an individual level. It's got to happen inside first. I was just talking about that, how it has to happen on an individual level. This was Stephen King. Some birds are not meant to be caged, that's all. Their feathers are too bright, their songs too sweet and wild, so you let them go. Or when you open the cage to feed them, they somehow fly out past you. The part of you that knows it was wrong to imprison them in the first place rejoices. But still, the place where you live is that much more drab and empty for their departure. Nelson Mandela said, I just accidentally clicked on that. Sorry. When a man is denied the right to live the life he believes in, he has no choice but to become an outlaw. Absolutely. This is Coco Chanel again. It's probably not just by chance that I'm alone. It would be very hard for a man to live with me unless he's terribly strong. And if he's stronger than I'm the one who can't live with him. I'm neither smart nor stupid, but I don't think I'm a run-of-the-mill person. I've been in business without being a businesswoman. I've loved without being a woman, made only for love. The two men I've loved, I think, will remember me on earth or in heaven because men always remember a woman who caused them concern and uneasiness. I've done my best in regard to people and to life without precepts, but with a taste for justice. Ralph Ellison, when I discover who I am, I'll be free. Soren Kierkegaard, people demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought which they seldom use. Toni Morrison, you want to fly, you got to give up the shit that weighs you down. That's the truth. And Ben Franklin, we went over this one, but we will always read it when we come to it. They who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Jim Morrison again. Expose yourself to your deepest fear. After that, fear has no power, and the fear of freedom shrinks and vanishes. You are free. Charlotte Bronte. I do not think, sir, you have any right to command me merely because you are older than I, or because you have seen more of the world than I have. Your claim to superiority depends on the use you have made of your time and experience. And Bob Marley. Better to die fighting for freedom than be a prisoner all the days of your life. Another way to say that would be, I would rather die a free man than live as a slave on my knees. And it is better to die for freedom and die free than to live in chains. This is C. Joybell C. Whoever that is, not sure. Life is too short to waste any amount of time on wondering what other people think about you. In the first place, if they had better things going on in their lives, they wouldn't have the time to sit around and talk about you. What's important to me is not others' opinions of me. What's important to me is my opinion of myself. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Soren Kierkegaard again. David Foster Wallace. The truth will set you free, but not until it is finished with you. Toni Morrison. Freeing yourself was one thing, claiming ownership of that freed self was another. Anais Nin. Reality doesn't impress me. I only believe in intoxication, in ecstasy, and when ordinary life shackles me, I escape one way or another. No more walls. Robert Frost said, freedom lies in being bold. Paulo Coelho. Now that she had nothing to lose, she was free. You can never be free until you can never be free if you are tied to things of the earth, material possessions. If you are emotionally invested in your possessions, which a lot of people are, you don't own your possessions own you. And you will never be free, ever. And you can never be free unless you're willing to die for it. I firmly believe that. Charlotte Bronte, this is from the book Jane Eyre. Jane, be still, don't struggle, so like a wild, frantic bird that is rending its own plumage in its desperation. I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will, which I now exert to leave you. A concept is a brick. It can be used to build a courthouse of reason, or it can be thrown through the window. Gilles Deleuze. The unhappiest people in this world are those who care the most about what other people think. That's the truth. That is the truth. I know people who care so much about what others think of them. And they are miserable. Miserable. We'll just go through a couple of these. Let's see. Robert A. Heinlein. I am free no matter what rules surround me. If I find them tolerable, I tolerate them. If I find them too obnoxious, I break them. I am free because I know that I alone am morally responsible for everything I do. We need to understand that. We really need to understand that. Doesn't matter what rules they have for us. These people are against us. What do you expect? And our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, said those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. Think about that. If you would deny others freedom, you don't deserve freedom. Ever. Which says a lot about the people in power, right? Here's a good one for today's world. Let children read whatever they want and then talk about it with them. If parents and kids can talk together, we won't have as much censorship because we won't have as much fear. Judy Blume. That's where censorship pretty much comes from, is fear. If we don't believe in freedom of expression for people we despise, we don't believe in it at all. Noam Chomsky. Pretty much the same thing as old Abe up here. David Foster Wallace. The really important kind of freedom involves attention and awareness and discipline and effort and being able truly to care about other people and to sacrifice for them over and over in myriad petty little unsexy ways every day. It does require responsibility, awareness and attention and discipline. Why is there a car stopping here? Who is this? Oh, it's the people are getting food. Never mind. Sorry about that, guys. William Faulkner. We must be free not because we claim freedom, but because we practice it. Yes, we have to practice freedom. Otherwise, we lost it. Let's see. Man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. It is up to you to give life a meaning. Yeah, individuals are responsible for what they do. You don't punish entire groups of people for the acts of an individual. You don't punish all of your children for something the one child does. And if you do, you're not a very good parent. I'm sorry to say it. I'm not even a parent, and I know that. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free. Arthur Schopenhauer. That's a pretty cool last name. The first duty of a man is to think for himself. You would think. Most people don't think for themselves. They outsource their intellect to the television and the media moguls and pre-packaged news stories to tell you what to think. Because most people don't want to think for themselves. They just want to be told what to think because thinking for yourself requires work. It requires effort. It requires remembering things, and, well, we don't even have to remember things anymore in our society because, you can just log it in your phone. You don't have to remember nothing. You just pull it up anytime. That's just terrible. True freedom is impossible without a mind made free by discipline. No one loses anyone because no one owns anyone. That is the true experience of freedom, having the most important thing in the world without owning it. Sigmund Freud, even though he's a deviant, what he said here was true. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. Absolutely. Abraham Lincoln said, "Whenever I hear anyone arguing for slavery, I feel a strong impulse to see it tried on him personally." Freedom is what we do with what is done to us. Jean-Paul Sartre, who also said, "Better to die on one's feet than to live on one's knees." The secret of happiness is freedom. The secret of freedom is courage. You see, freedom has a way of destroying things. And it can. It absolutely can. And Mary Wollstonecraft said, "I do not wish them, women, to have power over men, but over themselves." There's a lot of people in the feminist movement nowadays that, well, we'll say the extreme feminist movement, they want power over men, which is just terrible. C.S. Lewis, of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us to without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. Yes. If you want to rebel, rebel from inside the system. That's much more powerful than rebelling outside the system. That's what the Marxists believe. They believe changing from within, because it is more powerful than changing from without. He who has overcome his fears will truly be free. Aristotle. And we'll read this last one here, which is from Thich Nhat Hanh. Letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness. If in our heart we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free. Yep, you cannot be free if you are tied to material things. And we will stop there for today, and I will compile some stuff, and we'll start again tomorrow, because it's the weekend. Now we pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not unto temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.